Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr. Today we're going to take a look at Strat-O-Matic the Advanced rules. I did another video on the basic rules, and I'm not going to rehash all of the basic rules. So if you want to get up to speed, I would recommend checking that video out first before you come into the advanced, because I'm not going to be repeating all of the basic rules, which a lot of those are used in the advanced game as well. This video is only going to be talking about the differences between the basic and the advanced, or the additional rules that you use if you're doing the advanced game as opposed to the basic game. So again, go check the basic video out. If you haven't never played Strat before and you want to get up to speed, check that video out first and then come over to this one, and I'll talk about the advanced game. And then sometime in the future, my hope is to do the super advanced rules, which are way more in-depth and detailed. So the most obvious difference between the basic game and the advanced game is the fact that players are now rated with lefty-righty splits. The basic game was just one side of the card, the front side of the card, and you didn't have to worry about the handedness of the pitcher or batter. You just rolled and looked at the results, and very basic. But the advanced game introduces the lefty-righty splits, and that's on the back of the card usually. So here we have a couple of examples, maybe a little hard to read, but I'm using Lefty Gomez, which is right out of the rule book, and I'm using Pete Rose just because the rule book showed Al Simmons, I believe, and he doesn't have some of the ratings that I wanted to show. And so Pete Rose will be our example for that. And you can see that there are two sides of the card now. On the back side of the card, there are two sections. We have a left-hand section, which you would use against left-handed batters, and a right-handed section that you would use against right-handed batters if you're a pitcher. And for batters, just the same. The left section you will use against left-handed pitchers, and the right section you will use against right-handed pitchers. And there are extra ratings on the card as well, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So you'll also notice that on the pitcher card, it will tell you what hand the pitcher throws with. In this case, Lefty Gomez throws left. That means he's a left-handed pitcher. On the batter's card, there's a little designation in the upper left-hand corner that tells you either an R or an L or an S. R or L is right-handed or left-handed batting. S is a switch hitter. And in this game, in the advanced game, the switch hitter will always bat left-handed against right-handed pitchers and right-handed against left-handed pitchers. So switch hitters always bat with the opposite hand as the pitcher. So if Pete Rose was facing Lefty Gomez, who's a left-handed pitcher, Pete Rose would be batting right-handed. And if he was facing a right-handed pitcher, he would be batting left-handed. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose that yourself. That's just automatically done that way. The other designation you'll see that's a little different on the cards is power ratings. So here on Pete Rose's card, we see power W against left-handed pitchers and power N against right-handed pitchers. And that N means normal power and the W means weak power. And so that's another rating that you will have to keep in mind or notice on the cards. The other thing I'll note on the cards is that pitchers have several other ratings, which we won't get to all of them in the advanced game. A lot of these are super advanced, but they have ratings on here, such as a balk rating, a wild pitch rating. E is the pitcher's error rating. This is the pitcher's hitting card, number 1 WL, left-handed batter, weak, number 1 pitching or number 1 hitter's batting card. There's a hold rating. Again, a lot of these are super advanced, but I just want to kind of note them on here. Pitcher 2, that's his fielding rating. E4 is his error rating, which will come into play. You have starter 9. 9 is his how long he can last into the game. Relief 3. And again, we'll cover that in a minute. And then that's on the pitcher's card. Now on the batter's card, we see Pete Rose. He has ratings for different positions. Third base 3E17, for example, means he's a 3 range and a 17 error rating. E17 is E is the error rating. He's rated at third base, first base, left field. And you'll notice another thing on here is a +2 on his left field section, and that's his arm rating. And then, much like before, we have a stealing rating, a bunting rating, we have a hit and run rating. So all of those can come into play, and then a running rating. They also tell you on the card what percent of the time they are batting against a certain handed pitcher, so that you can kind of keep that in mind for purposes of being realistic in their usage. So in this particular card, Pete Rose, 39% of his plate appearances were against left-handed pitchers, 61% against right-handed pitchers. And then Lefty Gomez has his percentages listed there as well. Many of the results are going to be exactly the same as you would have seen in the basic game. A couple of them will be different. So now that we have all that kind of out of the way, let's talk about what these power ratings mean. What is an N or a W? When does that come into play? Well, in the advanced game, Strat-O-Matic, it limits the ability of low power hitters to hit home runs off the pitcher's card. Okay, so in the basic game, if you rolled a home run on the pitcher's card, the batter got a home run, regardless of how powerful he was or how weak he was or whatever. But we know that some batters don't hit very many home runs, and so in order to better exemplify that, some batters have a W rating on their card. In this case, Pete Rose has a W power against left-handed pitchers. So in those cases, instead of a home run, if it's rolled off the pitcher's card, it would turn into a single with 2 asterisks or a single 2 bases. So in the case of Lefty Gomez, you'll note on 4-5 here, let's say Pete Rose is a righty against him. 4-5 is an N-HR. That means home run if he has normal power on a 1-3. But in Pete Rose's case, because he's a left-handed pitcher, his power against left-handed pitching is a W. So in Pete Rose's case, this 4-5 would be a single 2 bases on a 1-3 instead of the home run. So that's how that works. And in those cases, you roll the 20-sided die, as you did before, and accept whatever the reading is. So in this case, a 1-3 on Pete Rose would be a single with 2 asterisks instead of the home run, or a fly ball to left field B on a 4-20. All other results are the same. It only modifies the home run, the N-HR, the home run rating on the pitcher's card. If you roll a home run on Pete Rose's batter's card, for example, a 1-5, in this case a home run 1-4, that stands. Even though he's a W against left-handed pitchers, home runs off of his own card stand the way they are. All right, so let's talk about runner advancement on hits. Well, for the most part, runner advancement is the same as it is in the basic game. It's the same as it is in the basic game. However, in the cases of singles or doubles, when they're not followed by an asterisk, remember, and the batter has the option of taking an extra base, when he has that option of taking the extra base, now the outfielder's throwing arm will affect the base running attempts for that additional base. So before, we didn't really factor in outfielder arm at all. But in the case of the advanced game, we do. So if you're taking that extra, trying to take that extra base, you take into account the fielder's arm, the outfielder's arm, which is indicated at the top of his card, like +2 here on Pete Rose, and that number is added or subtracted from the runner's running rating of the involved base runner. So whichever base runner you're trying to advance, it would be added or subtracted from his running rating. Now, when you add or subtract like this, the maximum combined running rating and throwing arm is going to be a 1 to 19. You're never going to have an automatic success on a 1 to 20. The best you can do is 1 to 19. So some runners have running ratings that are way higher, and regardless of what the fielder's arm rating is, the best you can do is 1 to 19. And the minimum is a 1. So you can't get higher than a 1 to 19 or lower than a 1. So runners will always be safe on a 1, and they'll always be out on a 20, regardless of what their running ratings are or the outfielder's arm is. Now, the one modifier to this is if the runner is being held on. So if a runner on first or second is being held on, then you're going to subtract a 1 from his running rating when he's held on. If he's not being held on, you're going to add 1 to the running rating. So if he's being held, you're going to subtract 1. If he's not being held, you're going to add 1. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, we're going to talk about an advanced cutoff rule. This is when you have a single with no asterisks and there's a runner at first and second, or the bases are loaded. Okay. Now, in those cases, you kind of follow a flow chart. First, the offensive manager is going to decide whether that runner on second, for example, is going to attempt to score by taking the extra base on a single with no asterisks. Okay, that's the first choice. Then the defensive manager is going to decide whether he wants to cut off the throw to the plate or allow the throw to try to throw the runner out at home. Okay, that's the defensive choice. So if he cuts off the throw, the runner on second base is going to score. Okay, because there's no play at the plate. So the runner on second will score. But the runner on first is going to hold at second base. So he stops that runner on first from getting to third because of the throw home. If he chooses to throw for the runner attempting to score, then you're going to make a roll to determine whether he's safe or out at home. Regardless, the runner on first automatically is going to get to third base on the throw. So it's kind of a trade-off. The defense has to make that choice. First, the offense has to decide whether they're going to try to have that lead runner try to score from second on a single with no asterisks. Then the defense gets to decide whether they're going to cut it off and stop that runner on first from getting to third, but allowing that run to score automatically, or trying to get that player or that runner at the plate. The trail runner is always the runner on first in those cases, by the way, when using that cutoff rule. So with the bases loaded or runner on first and second, the trail runner is always the runner on first. So if the lead runner is being held, the trail runner is also being held. If the lead runner is not held, the trail runner is not held. That's just, you're going to assume that they're holding or not holding both runners. All right. So that's how you do runner advancement different. Very, very minor differences, but you have a few more choices in the advanced game. What about fly balls? Well, the fly balls are the same as they are in the basic game, except that there is an additional reading, and that is a fly ball B with a question mark. A fly ball B with a question mark. And I'm trying to see if there is a fly ball B question mark on either of the cards, and I don't know that there is. But what you would see is you'd see a fly ball, whatever position, B, and then there'd be a question mark at the end of it. And those operate a little differently than a regular fly ball B. In those cases, if the ball is caught and it's not the third out, that runner on third doesn't automatically score. So on a regular fly ball B, the runner on third scores automatically. On a fly ball B question mark, the offensive manager decides whether he wants to try to score or not, or just stay at third on those plays. And if he does try to score, you take his running rating, you factor in the outfielder's arm, and then you add 2 to it. So it's a +2 bonus when you're trying to score from third on a fly ball B question mark. Fly ball B question mark. Oh, here it is. Pete Rose, 1-4 on against lefties, fly ball left field B question mark. So on a 1-4, if you'd rolled a 1-4 on Pete Rose's card and he's facing lefty Gomez and there's a runner on third, that runner on third would have the option of tagging up. He would not score automatically. And again, it's the runner rating of the runner on third, plus or minus the outfielder's arm, +2. And just like the other runner advancement, you can't ever get a result higher than a 1-19 or lower than a 1. Okay. Now, on a fly ball right field B, no question mark, just a regular fly ball right field B, you have the option of trying to have that runner on second advance to third. Okay, so on a regular fly ball right field B, no question mark, the runner on second, if you have one, can try to advance to third. And it's basically the same calculation. It's the runner rating plus or minus the right fielder's arm +2, because the throw is to third base from right field. Now, in those cases, though, it's a little different because the only time the runner's going to get thrown out is on a 20 on the die roll. If the roll is higher than the running rating, but not 20, then the runner actually decides to hold at second base. So the throw comes in fast, and the runner just decides not to take third. So in those cases, the only chance of the runner getting thrown out at third is if you roll a 20. Otherwise, either the runner's going to be safe because it's in the safe range, or he's going to hold at second base. And that's regardless of that, if that fly ball right field B occurs off the player's card or the fielding chart. Okay. It does not apply to the fly ball right field B question mark, though. Doesn't apply to those. And then there are other super advanced rules, which we'll talk about when we talk about super advanced, but that's the general rule. What about ground ball outs? Well, they're treated just the same as the basic game. Okay? Treated just the same as the basic game. You will notice on some of the more modern cards that there are underlined ground ball A readings on the pitcher's card or underlined ground ball C ratings on the batter's card. So you will notice some of those on certain card sets. Certain card sets will have that ground ball and it'll be underlined. That's because in earlier editions, so you can ignore them, I should say. Ignore the underline, proceed normally when the cards are playing against modern opponents. If you're playing a modern game, you can ignore those underlines on the ground ball A and ground ball C. That's because in earlier versions of the game, ground ball A readings only were on the batter card and ground ball C only were on the pitcher's cards. And so if you're playing recent teams against earlier teams, you could decide to reverse any readings that appear with an underline so that you would only have them on the card that they were originally intended to be on. But if you're playing a modern game, just ignore the underlines and proceed as normal and don't worry about it. We'll see that on 6-7 here on Lefty Gomez's card, the A is underlined, right? In any event. So what about the X chances in the X chart? Well, much like before, now the X chances are going to be abbreviated a little bit on this advanced side of the card. Like you'll see 412 on Lefty Gomez here is ground ball shortstop X, because they're abbreviated, right? There's some abbreviation there. And in this case, as I said, rather than just having one fielding rating that applies, you have a range rating that goes from 1, which is the best, to 5, which is the worst. That determines whether the fielder will catch the ball or whether it becomes a hit. And you have an error rating. And the error rating determines whether the lower error ratings are better because the fielders commit fewer errors, and the higher error ratings are worse because they commit more errors. So that's how you would look at the fielding ratings and how they come into play, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. If for some reason you have an error rating that's higher than the maximum showed on the advanced fielding chart, you just use the maximum E rating. The higher ratings apply to the super advanced chart. The other thing you'll note that comes into fielding is that catchers, which I don't have a catcher here, but catchers have a T rating. That's the possibility of throwing errors on successful stolen bases. Okay. All right. So what you would do if you do get an X chance, I've actually just blown up the let's see here, I gotta get to it here. Blown up one of the sections of the X chart, second base and third base, just to give you the example here. What you would do is you'd roll the 20-sided die like normal, like you did before, and you'll note that in many of the cases, you'll just get it'll just tell you what the result is. So if the second baseman was a 2 on a 1 or a 2, it's SI 1 asterisk means a single one base. A 3 through 6 is a ground ball A. 7 is ground ball B. 13 is ground ball B. 14 is ground ball C. And then 15 through 20 ground ball A. So that's how you would read those. But the difference with the advanced game is now you have a range that's not listed on the chart up here. Now, if you get something in that split range, like 8 through 12 for second base or 6 through 14 third base, what you will do is you'll roll all three dice. You'll roll all three dice and cross-reference the error rating that you find down here, the fielder in question's error rating, to determine the result. Now, in most cases, you're just going to add the two colored dice together. So let's say it was an E24 on second base. If the two colored dice are 2 through 7, it's an E with a 1 in parentheses. That's a one base error. If it's an 8 through 12, it's a ground ball A. So in most cases, that's what you'll see. If there's a reading, though, that yields a double result, then you'll use the white die, the non-colored die, to determine the correct result. And those results will be on a 1 through 6 scale rather than the 2 through 12 scale. And so you'll read those with the white die. So that's why you roll all three dice, because some of the results will have you refer to the 1 through 6 result, while most of them here, as we've seen in these two charts at least, are in the 2 through 12 range, which is going to be the two colored dice. And all of those, by the way, all the abbreviations you see are going to be explained at the bottom of the center field chart. I don't have the center field chart pulled up here, but you look at the bottom of the center field section and you'll see all of the abbreviations listed there for you to check out. Okay, let's get back to the cards for a second. What are some of the other card results you can see? Well, you will also notice that there are some ground balls with pluses on some cards. You'll see ground ball, and you'll see ground ball plus plus, or ground ball plus. Those use the basic game rule. If the infield is in, the runner's being held, then those ground ball plus pluses turn into singles, just like they did in the basic game. The other thing that you can see is LO max. And that's the same as the line out into as many outs as possible. It's treated as the same as it is in the basic game. The other thing is the plus injury results. So here on Pete Rose, a 112 is a foul out plus injury. And that's the injuries occur just as they do in the basic game and resolve the same way as they're resolved in the basic game. Okay. So some of the results, those results are all the same, but they're just, they look a little bit different on the advanced side of the card because there's less space to print that all out. So a 2-7, for example, on Pete Rose, a ground ball third base B plus. That plus would be the same as the plus plus on the basic game, the ground ball plus plus on the basic game. LO max, like a 3-12 here. LO third base max is a line out to do as many outs as possible. And then the plus injury is the same. All those are the same. They're just listed a little different because there's less room on the card. What about sacrifice and squeeze bunts? There's another difference. Well, first of all, as before, I think the basic game had the same rule. You can only use those when there, you cannot use those, I should say, when there are 2 out. Okay, and the sacrifice cannot be used if there's a runner on third. The squeeze can only be used when there's a runner on third base. So if you have a runner on third, the only bunt you can do is a squeeze play. And in the advanced game, each batter has an individual bunt rating. You'll notice Pete Rose's, his is a B here at the top of the card. And what you'll do is you will consult the advanced strategy chart here, and then you'll roll the dice to determine what happens. So, by the way, pitchers also have their own bunting rating, and you would use that bunting rating instead of the bunting rating on the bottom of the pitcher's hitting cards. So the pitcher's hitting cards have bunt ratings, but you would use the one on the pitcher's card instead of the one on the bottom of that card. Okay, so if the defense is, here's one little modifier. If the defense is playing in, then the bunter's rating is reduced by a grade. So Pete Rose had a bunt rating of B. If the infield's playing in, then his rating is lowered to a C. With the bases loaded and the infield in, the bunting rating is downgraded 2 levels. So a B becomes a D bunter. That's because there is a force play at home plate, and on a bunt, the runner on third has to try to advance if the ball's bunted on the ground. So that's one of the drawbacks of bunting with the bases loaded, is that the bunt rating is going to get lowered by 2 steps instead of 1. Now, you can use the sacrifice if there is a runner on first and third. I said you couldn't use it if there's a runner on third. That's if there's a runner on third only. But if there's runners on first and third, you can use the sacrifice just as you would normally to try to advance the runner to second. Now, regardless of what happens on the play, that runner on third is going to hold. So the runner on third is going to stay at third if you sacrifice with runners on first and third. If there's a pop-up into a double play, it's the runner on first that's going to get doubled up. The runner on third isn't going to be affected at all. Okay, but then what you do in the case of a sacrifice or a squeeze play is you'd roll 2d6, your 2 colored dice, and you'd cross-reference the rating with the number, and that'll just spell out exactly what happens. Okay, hit and run cannot be used with a runner on third base either, but you can use it any other time. And each batter has a hit and run rating. So in the case of Pete Rose, his hit and run rating is a B. Okay, that's shown on the top of his card. If the defense is playing in or the runner is being held on base, then the hit and run rating actually gets 1 step better, 1 grade better. So his B would turn into an A. Pete Rose would turn into an A hit and run rating if the defense is playing in or there's a runner being held on base. Now, in the advanced game, you can only hold a runner on when the infield's playing back. So you couldn't have an infield in and runner being held on situation. As in the basic game, when the result of a hit and run is batter misses pitch, the base runner has to try to steal. So you're going to try to steal like you would any other time. He's just forced to steal. But you would, to get the results, you roll your 2 colored dice and you cross-reference the hit and run rating with the dice to get the result, assuming it goes through normally. Let's talk about defensive strategy. So normal positioning for defense is infield back. Okay, infield back. But you can bring the infield in the advanced game, much like you could in the basic game. So when the infield is in, of course, the bunting ability is reduced, as we said. That's one of the drawbacks, but the hit and run rating is improved. And in the advanced game, you're going to use the regular basic rules for infield in, other than those modifications I mentioned of the impact on the batter's bunting rating. Now, the defense can bring the infield in at any time if they think there might be a sacrifice bunt. So that's the other thing. You don't have to wait. You can bring the infield in no matter what the situation if you think there might be a sacrifice bunt. Okay? Let's talk about stealing bases. Stealing bases is a little different in the advanced game. You're going to use the stealing grades shown in parentheses on the advanced side of the card. Here, let's see, where Pete Rose stealing C. There you go. Stealing is a C. Some pitchers, the other thing to keep in mind, some pitchers actually have different stealing grades than the E that's printed on the pitcher's hitting cards. And those pitchers, you'll notice, are listed separately on the roster sheet. So the roster sheet will list if a pitcher has a better steal rating than E. But generally speaking, you're going to use the same rules as the basic game with a couple of modifiers. You're going to factor in the catcher's throwing arm now on steals. So a catcher's throwing arm can be anything from a -5 to a +5 in parentheses. You'll see it in his catcher's rating section of his card. And those pluses or minuses get added or subtracted from the success chance of the base stealer based on his stealing rating. All right. AAA is not on here, but the all of the other ratings are. So if he's still in second and he's a AA, that means he's safe in a 1 to 17. But let's say the catcher had a -3 arm. Well, in that case, it lowers the safe chance to 1 to 14 in that case. One of the things that is also different, though, is that you can hold runners on base. And if you're holding the runner on base, just like you did in the basic game, it's going to subtract from the stolen base success rate. But in the advanced game, it's going to depend on the stealing rating to determine how much gets added or how much gets subtracted when the runner's being held. So, for example, a AA runner, stealer, if they're being held, it's a -2. An A runner, if they're being held, is also -2. A B runner is -3, a C runner is -3, a D runner is -4, and an E runner is -4. Okay, so it could be either -2, -3, or -4. Now, a AAA stealer has only a -1 when they're being held. But this also comes into play. So let's say that Pete Rose was a C stealer, which means he succeeds on a 1 to 11 at second base. And let's say the catcher has a 0 arm, so the catcher arm doesn't come into play, but he's being held on base. Well, C's, if they're being held, have an additional -3. So he's only safe if he's being held on a 1 to 8 instead of 1 to 11. All right? So that's the other modifier in the advanced game. One last thing about stealing is the T ratings of the catcher. If a runner steals second or third, and you roll a 1, a 2, or a 3 on the 20-sided die, a 1, 2, or 3, then the catcher may have made an error on the throw in those cases. So the runner's going to be safe on a 1, 2, or 3 most of the time. Most of the time. He's going to be safe on a 1, 2, or 3. But on a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to roll the 20-sided die again and see if that second roll is within that range on the T rating. So if the T is like a 1 to 4 or something like that, and you roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the re-roll, Then the catcher has committed a throwing error, and all the base runners are going to advance an additional base. Now, if that second roll is outside of that T range, then no error occurs and the stolen base is handled as normal. So that's the other difference on the advanced game, is you have to factor in that T rating on a 1, 2, or 3 roll on a stolen base. Okay. Other things that don't come up very often but may come up in the advanced game is, of course, injuries can occur to any batter if you get a plus injury result. If you're using the DH, the injury occurs to the pitcher in the field on a 6-12. So you get a 6-12 with the DH at bat and the pitcher gets injured. You're going to complete the play. You're going to roll the 20-sided die, look at the injuries, just as you would in the basic game to determine what injury happens. But in the advanced game, sometimes you'll get an injury and it's going to force you to put a substitute in at a position they are not rated in. Okay, in the basic game, you couldn't have a player play out of position. You couldn't have a player come out of the game with no backup at that position. But in the advanced game, you can. And so in those cases where you're gonna try to use a similar player. So if it's an infield position, try to find another infielder to put there. If it's an outfield position, try to find another outfielder. And in most cases, when you have a player playing at an unfamiliar position, he's going to have the worst possible defensive ratings. He's going to have a 5 range and the highest E rating he can possibly have at his position. And he's going to have a +5 throwing arm. And the T rating of the catcher and the pass ball rating of the catcher is going to be 1 to 20. They're going to all be maxed out. The only exception is that if you have an outfielder and he's playing another outfield position, not listed on his card, his E rating and his arm rating are unchanged. And he does not automatically become a 5. There is you would consult in the rules, page 18, the outfield fielding adjustment chart to adjust his range rating. If he's rated at 2 outfield positions, then you'll base the new rating on the first outfield position listed on his card. So they usually list it in order of primary position. So you'll use the first position listed on the card. Okay, and then again, in extreme emergencies, you may have a position player come into pitch. And in those cases, his defense is the worst. All of his endurances are the worst. All of his ratings are the worst. Okay, so if you have a position player come into pitch, all of his ratings are the worst. Assume he's throwing with the same hand he bats with and proceed from there. There is a pitching card, position player pitching card that you will use, and that's also on page 18 of the rules. You can find that. Just like in the basic game, you're going to limit batters to actual at-bats as much as you can. Limit pitchers to actual innings pitched as much as you can. Try to only use batters in the fielding positions that are listed on their cards. And try not to use starting pitchers in relief and relief pitchers as starters. Try to do your best to follow the actual ways that they were used. On the roster sheet, some pitchers will have an asterisk, and those pitchers can start on 3 games rest. Others, if they don't have an asterisk, they need 4 games of rest in between starts. Speaking of pitcher endurance, let's get back to Lefty Gomez. Let's get back to Lefty Gomez here. Speaking of pitcher endurance, each pitcher has a point of weakness in the upper right portion of their card. It's a number in parentheses after starter or relief. Okay? And it is the inning of work when the pitcher becomes vulnerable to fatigue. Now, you'll notice Lefty Gomez has two different ones. He has a 9 for starter and a 3 for relief. So if he's starting a game, he can go 9 innings, and the 9th inning is when he's vulnerable to fatigue. If he's relieving a game, it's in the 3rd inning of relief that he's vulnerable to fatigue. Okay? In the advanced game, you'll notice that there's a little dot next to this. There's a little dot there. Now, in the advanced game, anytime you roll a result that has a dot, like a 2-7 in Lefty Gomez's case against left-handed batters, or right-handed, I guess, you'll notice that result has a dot. If the pitcher is fatigued, those dot results become single two bases. Okay? Now, how does a pitcher become fatigued? Well, once he reaches his inning number on his card, anytime after that point he allows 3 hits or walks in the same inning, then he is fatigued. He's reached his point of weakness the next batter he faces after that 3rd hit or walk. Or if he allows 4 hits or walks over 2 innings, 2 consecutive innings, then he reaches his point of fatigue. And once he reaches the point of fatigue, all of those dots become single two bases. Intentional walks, hit by pitch, errors, those don't add up to the pitcher's point of weakness. Only the ones that occur after he reaches his inning of fatigue, and he is allowed 3 in the same inning or 4 over 2 innings, 2 consecutive innings. Okay. A relief pitcher's point of weakness is determined by outs. Okay. So a 1 or the first inning, he's immediately vulnerable to fatigue. And the second he allows 3 hits or walks, he's vulnerable to fatigue. He reaches his point of weakness. A POW, a point of weakness of 2, means he's vulnerable after he's recorded 3 outs. And then after that point, again, 3 hits or walks, and he's reached his point of weakness. Now, Lefty Gomez has a 3, so he could do 6 outs. After he pitches 6 outs, he would be vulnerable to fatigue, and it would be 3 hits or walks in the span of an inning or 4 over 2 innings, just like before. So there you have it. Those are the advanced rules. Now, again, some of these rules apply in the super advanced game, so that's why we didn't cover them. So like balk rating, wild pitch rating, catcher pass ball, that kind of thing apply in the super advanced game. And I hope to do another video where I talk about super advanced. That's when things get really detailed, really detailed. Advanced is a good in between the basic and the super advanced. Basic is very basic, and super advanced is very, very advanced. And so advanced gives you something kind of in between the two, but could be a good option if you're looking for a little bit more than the basic game gives you. You want those lefty-righty splits. This would be a good option for you. So hopefully you learned something today. Again, check out the basic video if you want to know the basics. Be watching for future videos in the future. I have videos on how to play different tabletop games as well, so check those out if you're interested. And that's where we will leave things. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. And until next time, have a great evening.